everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bippity Boppity Murder. This is episode 2. My name is Amy. I will be your host for this one, and I am joined by my co-host.
Hi guys, it's Debbie.
So this is the second episode in season 1, The American Dream. I guess it's murder. And so yeah, let's talk murder. All right, so today we're going to be doing Kentucky. If you listen to the last episode, you know that we're doing one murder in each of the 50 states of the United States. So today we're on Kentucky, which is where Debbie is from. Debbie is from Kentucky.
I know you can't see me, but I'm wearing a Kentucky sweatshirt today.
Yeah, perfect timing, Debbie. And so we're going to be in the small town of Bardstown, Kentucky. So I have been to Bardstown a couple of times. I don't know if you've been to Bardstown, Debbie, but
I'm
Bardstown.
not.
So Bardstown is a super cute little area. It is on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. If you guys didn't know, Kentucky is well known for their bourbon. That's pretty much the thing they're known for. And
And horses.
horses, yeah, bourbon and horses. That's what you get if you go to Kentucky. But it's just a nice little community. Little shops throughout the main streets. A few distilleries around, and actually home of my old Kentucky home, which is where the writer of that song lived.
I had no idea. I am from Kentucky, but the last time I heard my old Kentucky home was second grade when we sang it in choir.
Yeah, sounds
Super
about right.
popular around here.
Sounds about right. All right. So I've been really invested in this case for about 6 to 7 years now, since the first time I visited there and saw a lot of signs around the town about this disappearance. And I immediately, on the way home, fell down a rabbit hole, and I have been in that rabbit hole ever since. So let's get into it. So we start in 2013. There have been 5 murders/disappearances since 2013 until 2015. That's a lot in like a small town in 2 years. And all of them are unsolved to this day. We're going to be talking about the main one for the most part, but I do want to give you some background and tell you about the other ones also, because they are important to the story, and also they also deserve justice just as much as the main case that's going on there. So in 2013, May 25th, Jason Ellis is a police officer for the Bardstown Police. He is just basically a good dude. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is close to where I'm from. I am from Ohio. I do not live there anymore. That's where I'm from. And he actually, at one point, was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds, which are mine and Debbie's favorite baseball team.
We love us some Reds.
And he also went to the University of the Cumberlands, which also weirdly coincidentally is where me and Debbie went to college in Kentucky.
Is this case meant for us? Probably.
I feel like it is. So one day he's on his way home, and he gets off of the Bluegrass Parkway, which is a pretty major road in Kentucky. So he gets off the Bluegrass Parkway on exit 34, and he sees a pile of sticks on the ground, or branches, not just sticks, branches, like large branches. And he gets out of his police cruiser, turns the lights on, so anybody else getting off that exit. Also, I should mention, it is like 2 a.m. when this happens, 2:30 a.m. to be exact. Okay, so he turns on his flashing lights, gets out of the car, and goes to move these branches. He's off duty at this point. He didn't have to do this, but as I said, he's kind of just a good guy, and he helps the community in any way that he can. And he gets out, he reaches down to pick up the branches, and is shot multiple times by a 12 gauge shotgun. And the thing is that some of the shots hit where it was known that there was no like bulletproof vest coverage. Like the seam on the side, and then of course his head is not covered. And there's a lot of weird things about this day. So Officer Ellis is usually one of the canine officers. So he usually has his dog Figo on him. But this day he was not in his regular patrol car. It was in the shop for some reason, and he was just in a normal police car. And he did not have his dog on him that day. And also this police cruiser that he was in did not have a dash cam. So to me that's suspicious. It's somebody that knew this. It has to be. Because they timed this way too perfectly. They knew exactly when he was getting home. They knew that he wouldn't have his police cruiser. They knew that he wouldn't have his dog. It's just way too many coincidences to be coincidences.
Yeah, and not every average Joe is gonna know, like, oh, he's wearing a bulletproof vest, I've got to shoot him. Like, I guess the average person would know about, like, your head's not protected, but to shoot you in places that your vest isn't, like, that's just not something an everyday person would know. Like, I don't know that, so
Yeah. So
kind of crazy.
so he shot. A woman pulls up behind him, and at first, like, doesn't really see what's happening. His cruiser's kind of blocking everything. So she's sitting there. She's kind of just thinking that she's waiting for this officer to do whatever he's doing. And then this other man pulls up, and his name is Chad Monroe. He pulls up behind her and is like, "Oh, I'll just help this officer move these branches, so that like we all can get going home." Because these people have all like they're just getting off work. One of them worked at like a distillery. One of them, like they all were just getting off work. So he's like, "I'm gonna go help him, see what I can do." He gets there and finds Jason's body, and that is at 2:36. So literally, it's in such a short amount of time that all of this happened. And at 2:40, the woman that was parked behind him jumps out of her car, runs into the cruiser, and grabs the walkie-talkies that they all have, and gets on the walkie and just starts yelling like "Officer down, officer down." First of all, I have heard this recording and it is absolutely heartbreaking. And if I can find it, I'll put it in the or like if I can find it, I'll put it somewhere. But it is heartbreaking just hearing the panic in her voice.
Officer down, Bluefield Road. Okay, can you tell if he is breathing?
No, sir, he is not breathing.
Because he was, as I said, he was well known by a lot of people. He had been with the police force for years. So his weapon was still in the holster when they found him, which means he did not even get a chance to defend himself.
It gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, and I've been on this exit since this happened. And there's still the road is painted. Part of the exit is painted to honor him, and there's still a cross on the side of the road. And me, who's followed this story for so long, I almost broke down on the road. Like it was a problem.
Yeah. That's absolutely terrifying that, like, they had to know so much about him at that point.
Yeah. So that's pretty much. There's more to Jason, but as I said, I'm kind of just giving you the highlights. A lot of them. So that's pretty much what happened to Jason. So fast forward to April 21st or 22nd. Kind of depends on where you read it for some reason. I could never get the date perfectly in. Of 2014. So the following year. You have Kathy and Samantha Netherland. It's a mother-daughter. Kathy is a 48-year-old special ed teacher at Bardstown Elementary. She was loved and respected by the community. And then you have Samantha Netherland, who was a 16-year-old sophomore at Bardstown High. She was in school chorus, adventure club, young leaders program. So they're both very involved in the community and the school and everything. They were found with Kathy was shot and stabbed numerous times and had her throat slashed. Samantha was brutally bludgeoned with her skull beaten in and her throat slashed. And so Both were allegedly tied to chairs and tortured, but that has not been 100% confirmed. But it was a gruesome murder. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, they were shot and it moved on. This was gruesome, especially Samantha, the 16-year-old. And when they asked their family and everything, their family's basically like, they don't have any enemies. I don't know who would have done this.
Right? Because what special ed teacher and their child has enemies in a community? Like they're not,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Um, Also, I have heard from different sources that there was a phone jammer, which basically just stops use of incoming and outgoing calls, text messages, everything on a phone. And supposedly that was found near the front door, which would have stopped them from being able to contact emergency personnel or family or anything. They were also killed in two separate sections of the house. Kathy was near the front, and Samantha was near the back. So it looked like to a lot of people that Samantha tried to run out the back door and they stopped her. And so I don't know if that's why she was beaten so brutally, is it because she tried to run? But I feel like that kind of force probably would not be necessary for a 16-year-old. And I've seen pictures of this girl. She wasn't like a big girl. She was just a little petite 16-year-old.
Yeah, and she's super like scrawny too. Like she didn't hardly like have any weight to her. So there's no need. Like because I'm sure like from the horrific mannerisms that they were murdered in, like this man that done it. So it was definitely a man. And unless he was like disabled or something, like there's no reason he couldn't have probably just like held her down.
Yeah, and there was a car that was seen nearby. It was a black Chevy Impala. It was seen on gas station surveillance and may have info about this case. One of the theories is that the driver of this car was the one in the house, but they have not been able to find that car or who was driving it. So it's also just a really sad case. The community lost, like, I mean, kids lost their teacher, kids lost their friend, and like family members. I've heard interviews with the other daughter, Samantha's sister, and she lost so much of her life that day.
Where was she at?
She I never really figured it out. She just wasn't home. I think she was a little bit older, so I don't know if she had kind of moved out. I don't like it never said, but I did watch interviews with her and it was heartbreaking. I was very sad for her.
Right. It's never easy to lose one person in your life, but to lose two at the same time in such a gruesome manner, like
And
she's got a lot of healing to do from that.
to not know what happened also doesn't help.
Or why? Like who done it? Why did they do this um to a 16-year-old? Like a 16-year-old doesn't have time to make enemies.
No. So that brings us into the main case that I'll be talking about for the majority of this time, and that is the case of the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. This is the one that I will not say was a murder. I will say it is a disappearance. I refuse to lose hope in that, although she has been declared dead by everybody. I just don't want to say that because I have watched enough interviews with her family and with friends and everything that I refuse to lose hope for these people because they're all sweet and they all just want answers. So Crystal Rogers was last seen on July 3rd, 2015. She's a 35-year-old mother of five. She was last seen at the home that she shared with her boyfriend, Brooks Hauk, on Glenview Drive in Bardstown. And don't worry, I will tell you all about Brooks Hauk through all this, okay? I promise. The 2-year-old of the couple was left at the house when she disappeared, which was weird because she took that kid everywhere because he's 2 and it's kind of what you do. Crystal Rogers' car, which was a 2007 maroon Chevy Impala, was found near mile marker 14 of the Bluegrass Parkway. And as I said earlier, the Bluegrass Parkway, it's a main like strip of road, so that's why numerous things happen there. So it was on the side of the road. Her phone, keys, and purse were all still in the car. And it had a flat tire. It looked like there was like a screw in the tire, but it had been driven for a while on a flat because the rim was messed up. And that will happen if you drive on a flat tire, so don't do that. The family immediately suspected the boyfriend, Brooks Houck. He was apparently not really assisting in looking for her, and kept just claiming that he was 100% innocent and that he was helping with searches behind the scenes, quote unquote.
Okay, Brooks. Okay, Brooks.
He also was not the one to report her missing, even though she lived with him. Her
Suspicious, man.
her mother was trying to get a hold of her and finally reached out to him and was like, "Hey, have you seen Crystal?" And he was like, "No, she left last night and I haven't seen her since." And he supposedly thought that she just went to her cousin's house to cool off like she did after her fight. But in an interview with her cousin's like, "She hasn't done that in years." Like, what? So there was a lot of confusion. Yeah. But her mother is the one that did finally file a missing persons report with the police. And they did one of the things they did was a lie detector test on Brooks. That came back inconclusive, but can't really fully trust lie detector tests. They've been proven wrong a lot. But they are still used. And so time goes on. There's no real answers. At one point, Brooks is named the only suspect in this case. He, to this day, is the only suspect that is named in this case. And it has been like 6.5 years now. But I guess there's just never enough evidence. I don't know. So fast forward a little bit more, and you have Tommy Ballard. It is not September. It is November 19th, 2016. Tommy Ballard is Crystal Rogers' father. He's 54 years old, and he was kind of the one heading the search efforts for Crystal. Like, it's his daughter. He's going to do anything he can to find her.
Right? As most dads would.
Yeah. So he's out, and him and his grandson went hunting a lot, and they had kind of a little private hunting area that they went to. And so he's out there waiting for his 12-year-old grandson in the field to go deer hunting between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. while he was shot from the front and the bullet exited the back of his body. The grandson has been cleared of this due to the angle and everything. They determined that it was not like an accidental shot. But first of all, like, can you imagine being a 12-year-old and finding the body of your grandfather?
After you lost either your aunt or your mother, because we don't know which kid.
Yeah. So, the weeks prior to his death, Tommy claimed that he felt like he was being followed. And he told numerous people this. It even got to the point where he had cameras installed around the house and on his truck to try to figure out who was following him. And actually, police have all of this footage, but it's never been released to the public. And a lot of people think that he was getting close to finding something out about Crystal, about what happened to Crystal, because he had this thing that is only referred to as Tommy's box. And Tommy's box was filled with everything having to do with the case of Crystal Rogers. It had surveillance footage, letters, photographs, everything. Any tip that came in that didn't go to the police went to Tommy. It was a box completely overflowing full of information. And in a lot of these surveillance videos and photos was a white Buick. It was actually also seen by a couple witnesses on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway. Well, a white Buick. I guess we can't determine right now if it's the same white Buick. But a white Buick was also seen on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway on the day of Roger's disappearance, Crystal's disappearance. But was not there the following morning. So also a little suspicious that,
Where did the Buick go?
Yeah, exactly. And so it seemed like the shooter shot from actually near the Bluegrass Parkway. It looks like they parked on the side of it because the field is right next to it. Okay. And it looks like they got parked on the side of the parkway, got out to like not even really a clearing, but just where there was less brush, propped their gun up on a branch to steady it, and then shot from there. Actually, a few years later, some investigators went out there and they actually found a divot in one of the trees that they believe was caused by the recoil of the gun. So it's also just this family's lost, like this community has lost so much in this time by this point. And it's, first of all, I'm still like so sad about the grandson finding him.
Right. Like, they have traumatized so many children in this case.
Yeah, they're really good at that. So let's talk about the Hauk family. Which
I'm so happy about this.
love talking about the Hauks. So Brooks Hauk, as I stated earlier, was the boyfriend of Crystal. He was the last person to see her alive. And one of the things, like one of his business things, was that he owned several rental properties in the area. And in 2016 and 2019, two of those properties burned down. And there's not really a lot of answers as why. They were both kind of weird situations. So we have the house on Watts Court caught fire in the kitchen while tenants were out. The heat went out the night before, and the tenant was doing laundry that morning, and the fire started in the water heater. But as I said, could just be a normal fire, but also like kind of sounds weird to me for some reason.
That the fire started in the water heater?
Yeah.
How often does that happen?
I don't know. I honestly didn't do a lot of research about water heater fires. It's not one of the things I research a lot. And it actually burned down 4 days after the death of Tommy. And then the second one was a house on Wheeling Avenue, and it actually burned while it was still under construction. There was no gas or electricity to that building yet. And they do believe that there was some foul play, and they thought it was a employee or former employee of Brooks. So, some weird things, but that's what he did. He has a ton of rental properties around the area. Brooks Hauk is an entrepreneur. That is what he does. Apparently, currently, he's trying to make a church into a daycare. I don't know if I would trust him with children, so I hope he hires good childcare.
I would not send my kids there for the simple fact. Let's say devil's advocate, this man is innocent and has nothing to do with the Rogers case. Bad things happen to him.
Yeah.
So many bad things.
So then, Brooks has a brother named Nick. Nick, in my opinion, is also a sketchy character, and I'm going to tell you why. So, Nick is a former police officer who did work on the police force at the same time as Jason Ellis. We're just going to start there. He had
Suspicious.
It's suspicious that he worked at the police force at that time. He had numerous infractions while he was on the police force. Like, not reporting a missing teen, some driving issues, insubordination, sleeping on duty, taking a cruiser to his girlfriend's house. And he was known to kind of have tunnel vision on patrol, which just kind of just means you're only focused on like one thing. which is not good for a police officer.
I mean, he forgot to report a whole missing teenager.
Did he forget or he just not do it? Like,
He was like, too much paperwork. She'll be fine.
So also, while his brother was being questioned by the police regarding Crystal Rogers, he just called up his brother, like Nick called Brooks while Brooks was being questioned, and was like, "Don't say anything." Never said go get a lawyer. Just was like, "Don't say anything. This is what's going on." Like, basically, did the thing that you're not supposed to do as a police officer, of of interfering with a trial or with a case.
Right. You always can tell yours. Like, I could understand, like, devil's advocate once again, like, being like, you shouldn't answer questions without a lawyer, but he was just like, don't answer
Yeah,
anything.
don't do
Like,
it.
don't speak.
He also tried to get his brother to just leave at one point.
He just has suspicious road on his forehead at this point.
He was, weirdly enough, fired not long after that happened, but the exact reason for the dismissal was never given, so we don't know if it was because of that or if something else happened or if all of the past issues just kind of piled up and the police force was finally done with him.
Like, I'm sure it was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. I'm like, he didn't report a missing teenager. Like, there's a missing teenager that he just was like, they'll find themselves. Like, no, that's not what we do. You're a police officer. Your sole purpose is to report missing things.
So regarding the Rogers case, they also decide to give Nick a polygraph test. Yeah, so Brooks at least came up inconclusive, so whatever. Nick's came up that he straight up lied. And as I said, polygraph tests not always the most reliable source of information. But the lies only occurred when he was asked about Crystal. So I could understand, like, if, like, the whole test was kind of, like, lie, then just ruling it out. But when it only happens when you ask about one specific thing, eventually it starts looking real sketchy, dude.
Once again, Mr. Nick, you are suspicious.
Also, there was a blanket with bodily fluids found in the back of his police cruiser, but they never said what those bodily fluids were.
Ugh, I don't want to know, honestly.
Yeah,
I
same.
really hope they were blood.
Yeah, same. I don't trust him for anything. And so, also within the Houck family, we're going to talk about the white Buick. Yeah, it's a member of the family. So, as I said, Tommy mentioned numerous times that there was this white Buick. And it was documented numerous times in his like box of information. There was coincidentally a white Buick owned by the grandmother actually, of Nick and Brooks, Anna Whitesides. She did own the white Buick, and the Buick was sold before law enforcement could investigate it.
As one does when they are suspicious.
Yeah, just get rid of evidence. They actually ended up finding the car, I believe, in Louisville, which is not terribly far away from Bardstown. And I think they did finally, like, investigate it, look into it a little bit more. And there's a ton of theories that surround this whole situation. I'm just gonna go through nonsense theories for a second. My favorite is what I refer to as the Houck brothers drug theory. Um, so supposedly, it is suspected that Nick was smuggling drugs into the area and the surrounding area for major drug organizations. They don't know if that was the cartel or the cornbread mafia, which is, first of all, the best name for a mafia.
Honestly, if I'm a part of a mafia and it's not named the Cornbread Mafia, I don't want it.
Exactly. So they think that Jason Ellis was investigating Nick and that Brooks was also helping smuggle these drugs. They think that Crystal had information about the drugs and maybe even about Jason's death. And it is told that all of that information was in a manila folder. And Crystal actually mentioned this to a friend in case she was killed and ever went missing. She was like, hey, all this information that I have is in this folder. That folder, to this day, has not been found.
Everyone should have a folder that says in case you go missing. Because
Yeah.
if I go missing, Amy knows exactly what to do.
I do. We've worked this out. And supposedly Tommy was searching actually near one of Brooks' properties shortly before his death. So it's kind of one of those things again that there's just a lot of coincidences. And then we get into this information from an anonymous source. So this anonymous source is a inmate at the state prison. And he has tried to reach out to local law enforcement numerous times to no avail. And so finally, he actually decided to reach out to the Ballard family, which is Sherry and Tommy Ballard, and sent them this entire letter stating that he knew a lot of information regarding the death of Crystal. And he actually was found to be somewhat reliable because he had a lot of information that was not released to the public. That was correct. Like, it wasn't just like, it was very specific information. So, he told the reporter that Crystal's body was cut up and burned at a garage in Whites Mill, Kentucky. And I've actually looked up this area on Google Earth in a couple different ways, and there is what appears to be a burned building there, like burned down building there. And he said that the Netherland case is not connected. That's not proven information. But he says it was a gang initiation. First of all, that's the most brutal gang initiation.
Never seen a more brutal gang initiation. Normally, you think like you're just trying to get initiated. You just walk in, bang, bang, out. But not this. It was like an ambush, and they had a cell phone jammer.
Yeah,
What
this
kind
was
of gang initiation is this?
it's a
The
very
Cornbread Mafia?
this cornbread mafia man. It doesn't look like they mess
I'm
around.
They do not. They want the most serious of criminals. Like, as I've once said before, like, don't murder people. Go to therapy.
He also said that there were numerous people present in the shooting of Ellis. There was at least one shooter and a getaway driver. And I've looked at different angles of this on maps and Google Earth and everything else. And I've sent Debbie this entire like project thing that I made months ago regarding this case. And there is like an overhang kind of, like not really an overhang, but just like a cliff right there where they believe the shooter was, and then it did have easy access back to the parkway where a getaway driver could be. So it makes sense to me.
There was so much time between like the time like his body was actually found. Like, it wouldn't take much to just like from the distance on the map you sent me, it doesn't look like it would take much for the getaway driver to like be sitting there. No one's gonna notice, and then shoot, bang, bang into the car, and then by the time they had got there, they'd been long gone. Like, there was nothing around that area.
And a lot of people don't like think anything when they see a car on the side of the road if it's turned off and everything. Like, you're just like, oh, that car broke down and there's nobody in it. Do you ever really fully look to see if there's somebody in it?
I don't want to, honestly. There's that eye contact that we would make, and it would make things weird because I'm not stopping to help them.
Supposedly this random inmate does have some of the weapons at his home that were used. Why he has them, I don't know. He says they were like his cousin's friends or something like that. Like,
That's what all the suspects say. They're actually my cousin's friends. I don't know their name, but and AKA that means they're my weapons. I probably participated in this. Don't want to incriminate myself though. But if it gets me less time, here's the weapons.
yeah. At least one of the murders was allegedly a hired killing, but the source does not know who did the hiring.
I can tell you.
I feel like I never
I
did
would
some
believe
hiring.
I'm gonna say it's Mr. Entrepreneur, Brooke Hawks himself.
The source got his information, as I said, from his cousin, who's more connected with the perpetrators than he is. So this also could all be hearsay.
But I'm gonna tell you if that cousin, it all boils down, if that cousin's the cousin on his mother's side, you know that cousin told him. Deep father side, a little sus. You can never believe the father's side.
So in 2021, something major happened in this case that I was very excited about, and that is that the FBI got involved. Finally. Been waiting for this moment.
The FBI takes their slow time in getting involved in some cases, and then other cases they're immediately involved.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Also,
crazy.
another big organization that got involved was the IRS. You know, the
Was
people with the taxes.
Brooks Houck was an entrepreneur.
He was.
Let's not forget
He
his
was.
entrepreneurship.
So they began searching numerous places of interest. They ended up searching at least 3 rental properties owned by Brooks in the Woodlawn Springs division of Bardstown, Kentucky. They included several cadaver dogs and dug up a portion of the land with excavators. If you are asking, yes, the government is helping to pay to fix the land of these poor individuals who live there. Numerous items of interest were recovered and sent to a lab to further the investigation. A lot of these things were sent to Virginia at Quantico, which is like the lab for the FBI. Like they have smaller labs. This is the lab. That's how you know they're taking things seriously. And then they also searched the home of Brooks. Numerous items were seen by neighbors being carried out from the home to a van owned by the FBI, including boxes, firearms, hard drives, pretty much anything that could have any kind of information on it. They also searched the home of Nick. You can't have one brother without the other. Gotta include them both. So they searched the home of Nick, but they seem to be focused more on Nick's pickup truck than anything else, and I'm intrigued on why. Because there's not a lot of information. You just kind of have like what the neighbors have seen. And I am on a lot of Facebook groups about this, and the neighbors, they'll tell you things. It's great. I love it.
They love to tell the things.
I love it. I feel like the neighbors of these people are my biggest source of information at this point.
They're like 2:30 a.m. Brooks Houcks went to the bathroom.
But like, I love it. And they also took several items from Nick's house. And then they also searched the Houck family farm. It is believed to be the last place that Rogers was seen alive. It's either was at the farm or at their actual home. It kind of depends on the time that she disappeared because they were at both of those places that night. The divers actually, there's several lakes on this property, so they had divers going into the lakes. And there's 300 acres of land here, including water, caves, and brush. So these guys had their work cut out for them.
But
And
what a place to hide a body, you're hide a body and dispose of evidence like 300 acres with water sources and caves, like it's gonna be almost impossible to find anything if they didn't want them to.
exactly, which is why, of course, they have the cadaver dogs still going. They're doing everything they can to possibly find anything. Also, during these investigations, not or during this time and during these investigations and such, not on these properties, but other people's remains were found in different places. I'm not saying it was on these properties or anything, but I don't know what's been going on.
Why does this happen? Like, one of the crimes I'm researching now, like, there was a kidnapping victim. They found another kidnapping victim. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why is it just commonplace?
Yeah,
Why are we finding so many bodies?
they would find remains and take them to get tested, thinking they were like hopefully Rogers. Never Rogers. Never Crystal.
I mean, good for them. these families have answers, but still.
They also confiscated and searched Crystal's car. They still have that car to this day. And it's kind of in a police storage unit kind of thing. Numerous items during this time were found. At least 2 items were quote unquote expedited. And as I said, all of them were taken to Quantico, Virginia. And they have yet to come out with any information. I do know that right now they're trying to go for an arrest more than finding her body. I think they're hoping that one thing will lead to the other. So right now they're trying to gather enough information to make an arrest. And I've seen interviews with Sherry Ballard, who is Crystal's mom and the sweetest lady ever. And if anybody ever says anything bad about Sherry Ballard, I will fight, because she's amazing. And she's been through so much. And she was there almost every day of the investigation that they were doing. And they had, of course, police tape around everything. But she was always right outside the police tape, watching, waiting for any kind of answer.
Because, I mean, at this point, these two have been suspected of killing not only her daughter, but her husband, and all her husband wanted was the answers about her daughter. So I'm like, the strength of this woman to show up there every day and not kill these men herself.
Plus, she's probably seen these men that just around.
Hashtag boss lady.
This lady, she's great. That whole family is great. I've seen interviews with her brother, and interviews with the brother, aunts, mother. I've seen so many interviews during this case, and there's been some really interesting interviews actually. That's kind of the end of my my information that I have, but I did want to go back to one thing really quick, that I forgot to mention, and I'm very sorry that I forgot to mention. So her brother, he saw the car after it was found, and he said a couple things about it that intrigued me. So he said, first of all, that the seat was not in the position that Crystal drove it in. When you get in your car, you have your seat in a very specific place. You don't move it. And
The most I move my seat is to recline backwards to take a nap on lunch. The position of my seat stays the same. Because then if you move your seat, you have to move your mirrors. You have to move your side mirrors. You have to adjust your seat belt. It's just an inconvenience. Nobody moves their seat.
so the seat was further back and leaned back, not in the way that Crystal drives. And also, he said that Crystal would never pull over for a flat tire. We all know those kind of people. I know Debbie, all right? That's the person I know.
I am the problem.
But she was just not one of those to pull over. It's kind of one of those things, she's a woman in this day and age where it's not the safest thing to be a woman in this day and age, unfortunately.
You bend your rim, it's more cheap to replace than planning my funeral, okay? I'm the same.
So also her phone, wallet, everything was left in there.
I don't leave my phone anywhere, especially if I had to pull over the side of the road because my car is messed up. And she's a woman. So she has 5 children. She has a boyfriend, she has a dad, and she has a mom. And on top of that, she has a brother. If you have a flat tire, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna call one of those people to come do it, because I'm not gonna do it myself on the side of the road.
Exactly.
Absolutely not.
My car overheated in a Taco Bell drive-thru, and I panic text my best friend and then also called Debbie, who was my other best friend. And I stayed on the phone with her the entire time. I was in the Taco Bell parking lot waiting for my car to cool down.
And guess who's not missing? Amy. So women are not crazy. We are very aware to the point, we're not gonna just pull over the side of the road, leave all of our belongings in our car, and start walking to find, especially when you have a cell phone. No. Mm-mm. No, man. No.
Yeah, it's not like this case happened in early 2000s or the 90s. This was 2015, okay? There was perfect access to a cell phone by that point.
Okay. So the Bluegrass Parkway, I don't know exactly where it goes through, but I'm pretty sure it goes through like your bigger cities. So it goes through like Louisville for sure, and then it comes down through like Bowling Green, and it hits like your major city points that have like you're not gonna have service on that area. So like for her to be pulled over on the Bluegrass Parkway, and for her to be like for the suspicion for her not to have her phone because she didn't have service, that's not a likely suspicion. Like you don't leave your cell phone because you could walk maybe 20 feet and have service. So she's not gonna just leave her cell phone behind.
Yeah, so it goes from like, so I take 65 north a lot when I go from Tennessee to Ohio because I live in Tennessee now. And the Bluegrass Parkway goes from kind of near like Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, that kind of area on 65, all the way to Lexington. So it is really like a major shot over there.
Like we have phone towers in Kentucky. Like you think, oh, Kentucky, barefooted overall people. No, we have service. So mainly our bigger city like I-75, 64, the Bluegrass Parkway, all of those areas you're like guaranteed to have service. Like you're not gonna lose it. And then you have your back roads. Yeah, yes, you will, but there's no reason she left her phone behind because it she had too many people to contact to be able to get a hold of someone to come change that tire. And um I think it's very easy to put a screw in after a tire after like you murder someone.
Or they were trying to escape and then they're like, oh shit, the flat tire.
Yeah. They're like, we'll just drive this into a pond. Just kidding. But yeah.
Can't drive it with its flat tire. Um,
And Crystal Rogers wasn't a tall girl. Like
mm,
her seat's not gonna be reclined back. She's barely seeing, you know?
yeah, that's for sure. So I think that's all of the facts I have. So Debbie, would you like to go into the opinions? Because I
I
have
know
a
what
lot.
happens. I know what happens. First of all, I'm gonna say that Nick Houck is a member of the Cornbread Mafia. If not, he wants to be. I think you have to commit crazy crimes to be a part of the Cornbread Mafia. But all jokes aside, no. I think that Nick Houck most likely did not murder Crystal. I think he knows who did it, and I think that person is uh oops, I got the brothers confused. Hold on. I don't think Brooke Houck's murdered Crystal. I think Nick Houck murdered Crystal for his brother. I think that um, maybe that it had something to do with Jason Ellis, or maybe they just had a dispute on the over children or breaking up or whatever couple fight about that leads to murder. But he it's very common that brothers will lie for each other, like siblings, family members, they're tell death, and talk family members are even worse, especially if you're selling drugs together. Like you sell drugs together, you're bound for life. And he's gonna protect his brother at all costs. So Brooks calls Nick up and is like, my girlfriend's causing problems and disappears Crystal Rogers. Like and so I think that's why on the lie detector, Brooks was inconclusive. I think he felt guilty enough that, but he wasn't lying. So I think that caused the lie detector to go a little bit crazy. But then at the end of the day, like, oh, Nick over here was completely just lying because he murdered her
I
or
think
kidnapped her.
I think they both had something to do with it personally. I think it was a combo. Um, I don't know how, but I do know that first of all, like a lot of people ask about like how these guys were so good at first of all these long range shots. These like people in this area were trained from birth to shoot, okay? It's just a thing.
True. What you see about Kentucky, everyone here hunts. Like, especially men, like, I've seen women that shoot better than snipers when it comes to deers and squirrels. Like, it's the South. People hunt, and it wouldn't be an easy it wouldn't be a hard feat for some to find someone that was able to shoot a gun for a long distance. I mean, they'll shoot rabbits and turkeys and
Yeah, so and I every part of me thinks that Nick does have something to do with Jason Ellis though.
oh, it's that's kind of crazy to me. Is like they're worse, and then it had to be an inside job to me because you don't shoot someone. No, you don't shoot someone that way. I could understand if maybe they shot him in the bullet vest and realized he was wearing a bullet vest, but at that point he would have drawn his weapon. Like they had to hit him and knock him down to the point he couldn't get to his weapon. So I feel like probably killed him on the first shot or mortally wounded on that first shot. And you don't just accidentally stumble upon that distance and shoot someone right where their bullet vest isn't. It's just not a thing you do
Yeah, I
without prior knowledge.
I 100% think that because Nick and Jason did work together occasionally. They were mostly on different shifts, but they did work together occasionally. And I I don't know. Nick is just a sketchy character to me. I think he had something to do with it, and until there is concrete evidence that he did not, it is a hill I would die on. Um,
Unless they come out and be like, Joe Schmo over here murdered Jason Ellis, will go to my grave thinking was one of the Hawks brothers.
yeah. So, um, I will say when I this is just like a side note, but it's still about the story. So the first time I went to Bardstown when I got invested in this case, I we were just walking around the downtown area and driving around, and we saw some like signs everywhere. And these signs were a lot of them just said Crystal for justice or justice for Crystal, justice for Crystal. But some of them were like, "We know you did it. We know it wasn't amnesia." That was my favorite sign, and I was like, I need to ask somebody what this means. And so I asked one of the like shop owners. I was like, "Hey, so we're seeing these signs everywhere. Do you like what's going on?" And it was maybe a year after she went missing, maybe not even that. And she was so ready to tell me about this. She was like, "Oh, let me tell you." And she was like, "So this girl Crystal went missing. We all know who did it. Every single like they are passionate about it there, and I love that. They refuse to let this case go cold. They are not giving up. And at one point, they did put all of the signs on a fence that was on at the end of Brooks House like road that he was on, so that he had to see them every day. And that is a level that I want to be at.
Because billboards aren't or aren't cheap. Like you can't just purchase. I mean, you can, but they're like hundreds of dollars. Someone is out there paying hundreds of dollars so Brooks House doesn't sleep good at
Well,
night.
these were all just like normal, like tiny signs, but there are also billboards. There are exactly at
Oh,
least two billboards. There's one on the like on a main strip of land that says like it says if you have any information or if you saw this car on this day, this is what happened. Crystal Rogers went missing. She was last seen with Brooks Hauk. And there's also another sign. So last time I was there, I talked to some really cool bikers that were in the area and that I became friends with and that I would just hang out with at night while my mom and sister were asleep and we would drink and hang out. And
me a part of a biker gang, and she can't convince me otherwise.
they were really a biker gang. They were just like a group of friends that like to ride. Um, but I did have them there. They went to a distillery, and I told them all about this case because I have a problem. So they went to the distillery the next day, all of them, and they actually told me that there was a large billboard next to the distillery. I'm like, oh, talking about Crystal, and they looked at me with the straightest face, and it said no. It had all of the victims on it. Like they were ready to tell me about it, and I loved it.
They're like, there's so many more. It's not just Crystal.
I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
know.
that's
But yeah, it's a crazy case, and I literally look for updates on this case on a daily basis. I go to Google, I type in Crystal Rogers, and I ask for everything within the last week, and I look for any new updates because I am invested.
Yeah, some of these cases are, that we look into are very emotional, and, like, us understand how we have found so many cases so far, in the short amount of this podcast that are, like, unsolved, but in such small areas that they should like or, like, people know who've done it and there's just no arrest, like, what torture would that be, like, walking by this man every day and knowing he has answers about your daughter and your husband and just not being able to give them to you or won't give them to you.
That woman has more willpower than I will ever have in my entire life to not kill that man.
Oh, absolutely.
Shout out to you, Sherry. I love you, and if you ever need anything, you can find me.
We always stand a queen.
For real. Sherry, if you ever hear this and you need anything, our email is bippityboppittymurder@gmail.com. Please reach out. I love you. It's a heartbreaking case, and I'm just I just want I'm gonna say I want answers, but I know that the family needs them
Yeah.
because I can't imagine like losing like one of my siblings and my parent like both brutally murdered or one missing and never knowing what happened. Like if you lose somebody by natural causes or you at least have some kind of answer, that's one thing, but never being able to get that closure.
Can you imagine the kids? Like, they have 5 or she has 5 kids, like, that just lost their mother and have no answer as to where her mother is. And Brooke I understood Brooks is just the father of the smallest one, correct?
Correct.
I'm like, growing up knowing that your father most likely has something to do with your mother and not having those answers, but because he's raising that child now and, like,
Yeah, he has full custody of the kid. Sherry and Tommy did fight for custody. They did lose that, unfortunately, and Sherry continues to still fight for that custody, but Brooks currently has custody of the I was gonna say 2-year old, but at this point he's probably 8 or 9.
and like, kids are mean, especially at that age, like, they say stuff to kid at school, like, I don't know. That's just too much. That's too much to have to deal with as a 8 or 9-year-old, or however old her other kids are.
Yeah.
Like, they need answers.
Yeah, they deserve to have all the answers and all the love sent to them. And if you guys say anything mean about them, I will physically fight you, and I'm not sorry about that. And I'll say that about a lot of our families that we talk about, as long as the families are not involved in said murder.
If they are the murderers, we don't feel as strongly about them, but there's so many times in life that, like, these families have to go through so much and they're like, "Oh," and then I see it a lot, especially, like, on TikTok or, like, Facebook when I'm on there and you see posts about cases or updates and people are like, "Well, the family should have done this." The family shouldn't have to do that. Let's just be honest, like, the family shouldn't have to do anything. They someone should have refrained from killing someone. Like, let's just be honest, like, if it's anyone's fault here, it is the murderers. It's the person that killed someone. Someone shouldn't have to worry about the situation they're in. They shouldn't have to worry about what they're wearing. They shouldn't have to worry about where they're going. They shouldn't have to worry about, "Oh, I let my kid outside to play." Like, shut your faces. If you're gonna
Yeah,
be mean, just shut your faces.
for sure. I'm actually currently trying to find something really quick. So Brooks Hack at one point did go on Nancy Grace because basically a lot of people kept saying that he wasn't doing enough, and the family, of course, at this time is talking to reporters, talking to um pretty much anybody, and first of all, I found a couple of interviews that Brooks did. And one of them, somebody questions him, and he says, "I don't have anything to say. I really don't have anything to say. I really don't have anything to say because I don't know anything, so I don't have anything to say," which is a weird thing to say.
I'm sorry, did he say he didn't have anything to say? I didn't quite catch What's that?
Like, why? Why? That's a good exact quote, by the way. That's not just me, like, making that up. No, that's an exact quote. And also, at one point, he did go on Nancy Grace, and that was a weird interview, by the way. If you ever want to, I feel like everybody should watch that interview. It's just a weird interview. I feel like he went too hard. Like, they're like, you're not doing enough. And he was like, I'll show them not doing enough. I'll go to Nancy Grace.
And like, what brave pants he put on that day. Like, like, I'm scared of Nancy Grace and I've never committed a crime.
Same.
She like attacks people. Like the ones that don't do enough or like in her eyes and they're not like helping or they're impeding the case. Like she's brutal on them. And I'm like, he was brave. He's like, you know what? Let me show you all.
Yeah, you
And he
should have
went
just
to
done
the
like,
source.
you should have just done like a local news or something, buddy.
Or just passed out flyers. Like, just some.
Just go to a couple of
Not
the
Nancy
searches.
Grace.
Just go to a couple of the searches.
Like, tell us you killed her. Like.
Like, I think he just went too hard, okay? In my opinion. All right, I think that's all I currently have to say about the case. It's not all I have to say about the case, but I can go on about this case for hours and hours on end, and I need to stop myself at some point because I have a problem and I've done too much research.
It's definitely a sad, concerning case.
Yeah, and if you have any information, you can, or any tips or anything, you can reach out to the FBI. Their number is very simple. It's just 1-800-CALL-FBI, and they will either take your tip or they will lead you in the direction that you need to go. And if you are scared to even do that, you can always reach out to us at bippity-boppity-murder@gmail.com or any of our socials. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, kind of, Twitter occasionally.
Do TikTok or Facebook if you really want to reach us, or our email. Our email is constantly checked.
Yeah, we check all of those three pretty regularly. So I think that's all I have about the case. Do you have anything else, Debbie, you want to add?
No, I'm good.
All right, so thank you guys for joining us on another episode. And we will see you guys, or talk to you guys, I guess, the next time. Bye.
Bye.